Throughout North America's long and eventful history, a wide variety of civilizations have thrived, each with its own tales of fortitude, perseverance, and at times terrifying brutality. Many lesser-known Native American tribes have fallen into oblivion, while the more well-known ones get all the attention. Their myths and legends are both fascinating and unsettling due to their unique customs, ferocious fighters, and cryptic ceremonies. The stories here include the eerie traditions of peoples whose names may have slipped our minds. Come explore the hidden stories of the 15 most scary Native American tribes in history. Number 15, the Kawa Tribe. The Kawa people are indigenous to the Canadian province of British Columbia, specifically the Kiowa region. It wasn't long until they made their way to what is now Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. After that, they settled in western Montana. The Kawa were originally from the northern Missouri River Basin, according to early accounts. However, by 1650 or so, they had moved south to the Black Hills, where they coexisted with the Crow. After being pushed south by the Cheyenne and Sioux, who had been driven from the Great Lakes by the Ojibwe, their voyage continued as they traveled down the Platte River to the Arkansas River. The indigenous Kawa people encountered hostile Comanche upon their arrival. A deep kinship was formed as the two tribes shared the country and battled, hunted, and traveled together about 1790. Another group that formed strong alliances during this period were the Plains Apache, who were also called the Kiowa Apache. The Kawa were nomads who lived in teepees and subsisted mostly on buffalo hunting, vegetable collection, and camping. Their legendary military might allow them to launch attacks over vast distances from what is now Canada to Mexico. The Kawa weathered the severe winters well and never moved south of their homeland, where they prospered despite the terrible conditions. One of the most fearsome tribes in the area, they were known for being strong fighters. With their signature on the Medicine Lodge Treaty, the Kawa people committed to relocating to an Oklahoma reserve in 1867. Still, they ventured beyond the reserve on a regular basis and, beginning in 1874, fought again with white settlers, losing again in 1875. Satanta and Satank, two of their most famous leaders, were famous for their roles in the Warren Wagon train raid. White settlers were allowed access to Kawa territory in 1901. The Kawa people no longer own more than little, dispersed pieces of the 160 acres allotted to each family. Number 14, the Cherokee people. Native American communities in the United States' southeastern woodlands include the Cherokee. The majority of their population resided in river valley villages over around 40,000 square miles in what is now southwestern North Carolina, southeast Tennessee, southwest Virginia, western South Carolina, northern Georgia, and northeastern Alabama prior to the 18th century. One branch of the Iroquoian language family includes Cherokee. According to ethnographer James Mooney's 19th century account, the tribe left the Great Lakes region, where they were joined by other Iroquoian groups, and moved south. In 2007, anthropologist Thomas White made the case that these populations split away around 4,000 years ago, with the Appalachian area being the most probable starting point. The Cherokee were identified as one of the 5 civilized tribes in the 19th century because of their agricultural way of life, permanent settlements, and acceptance of some customs of white immigrants. They developed their own way of writing as well. North Carolina's Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, Oklahoma's Cherokee Nation, and Oklahoma's United Kituwa Band of Cherokee Indians are the 3 modern-day Cherokee tribes that have received federal recognition. With more than 300,000 people, the Cherokee Nation easily qualifies as the biggest. More than 819,000 individuals in the U.S. identified as having Cherokee ancestry in the most recent census, yet the vast majority of these people are not officially part of any Cherokee tribe. Most members of the United Kituwa Band are descended from old settlers who, before to the Indian removal, migrated to Arkansas and Oklahoma from the southeast in the 1817–1818 time period. Those who were forcefully removed from their land in the 1830s were linked to the Cherokee. members of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, trace their lineage back to those who fought against being relocated. They live on the Qualla boundary in western North Carolina. After relinquishing their tribal membership, they became citizens of the state and the United States. However, in the late 19th century, they reconstituted as a federally recognized tribe. Number 13. The Simeon Tribe. Historically, the Simeon were a collection of Native American tribes residing in what is now British Columbia, Canada, and Alaska, USA, on the northwest coast regions bordered by the Skagit and Nass Rivers, as well as Millbank Sound. Coastal Simeon is spoken along the coast and lower Skagit River, Nisga'a is spoken along the Nass River, and Kikon is spoken in the upper Skagit region. These three dialects are the primary means of communication among the indigenous people of the area. One of the Penutian languages is Simeon. The Simeon economy was built around fishing. The summer was a time for fishing, when they would reel in salmon on their migration and ulayon, a kind of smelt whose oil was very valuable and provided sustenance for many people in the area. Large, permanent winter homes constructed of wood and adorned with elaborate carvings and paintings were a way for wealthy Simeon households to display their riches. They also hunted terrestrial animals in the winter. There were 4 primary divisions among the coastal Simeon and Nisga'a clans, and 3 among the Kian. Family ancestry was traced via the mother, and each group was further subdivided into smaller pieces or lineages. Separate fishing and hunting areas, berry patches, homes, and distinctive crests commemorating important family events were common features of these lineages, which often functioned as autonomous social and ceremonial entities. A tribe was comprised of many lineages, each with its own leader. The highest-ranking chief would be acknowledged as the chief of the tribe. The winter village locations and other significant assets were divided among the tribes, and members of the tribe would work together in rituals and battles. Not only that, but the Simeon were renowned artists in their own right. In particular, they made totem poles, columns that were carved and painted to commemorate the leaders who had passed away. Number 12. The Arapaho. Native Americans of the Arapaho language group resided in the 19th century in the states of Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas, near the Platte and Arkansas rivers. Their language is related to the Algonquian language family. Their oral histories reveal that the eastern woodlands were formerly home to permanent settlements where the people cultivated. The Arapaho, on the other hand, abandoned their agricultural and established way of life, and slowly made their way westward in response to pressure from neighboring eastern tribes. There were 2 distinct bands by 1830, with one band centered around the Platte River in the north and the other around the Arkansas River in the south. The Arapaho, like many other eastern tribes who crossed the plains, adopted a nomadic lifestyle, riding horses and subsisting on buffalo meat. They lived in teepees. Along with gathering natural herbs, they bartered buffalo meat for crops grown in Europe, such as maize, beans, and squash. Native American farmers in what is now North and South Dakota, and the Arikara and Mandan peoples in what is now the Southwest, were their primary trade partners. In the past, the Arapaho had a vibrant spiritual life, where seemingly little things had profound significance. A holy bundle included a flat pipe, a hoop, or a wheel, both of which were objects of great devotion to them. The Sundance was an important part of Arapaho culture, as was the practice of forming religious and military units according to one's age. The Shoshone, Utes, and Pony were among the several tribes with which the Arapaho struggled often throughout history. A number of Southern Arapaho fought side by side with Southern Cheyenne in 1876 in the Battle of Little Bighorn, when they forged a tight alliance with George Armstrong Custer. The Southern Arapaho and Cheyenne were granted a reservation in Oklahoma by the Treaty of Medicine Lodge in 1867, while the Northern Arapaho and Shoshone were granted a reserve in Wyoming. Number 11. The Iroquois Confederacy. Among the many indigenous North American social and political groups, the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois, stand out. The Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca were among the tribes that formed an alliance and flourished as a result of their mutual support and collaboration. The Oneida and Onondaga peoples, who lived in what is now New York, brought cultural and geographical variety to the table, while the Mohawk were renowned for their early interaction with Europeans and strategic eastern location. The southern and western Cayuga and Seneca peoples added even more strength to the Union. Iroquois, meaning rattlesnake, really came from the Algonquin people who were enemies of the Confederacy. Their reputation for lethal surprise strikes is the inspiration for this moniker. Many other tribes were afraid of the Iroquois because of their vicious warriors, but the Huron and the Erie were no match for them. The youngsters of the Iroquois tribe were prepared for combat at an early age via intense military training. Their unrelenting raids, ruthless efficiency, and fierce fighting spirit made them an unstoppable force. Become a skillful warrior was a common path to become war chief, a highly esteemed title. A severe part of Iroquois combat was the running the gauntlet ceremony, which symbolized the harsh realities of tribal struggle and discipline, and required captured foes to race between two lines of Iroquois warriors brandishing thorny rods. As they extended their area in the 17th century, the Beavers defeated the Susquehannock in Pennsylvania and severely weakened the Hurons surrounding the Great Lakes. This highlighted their superiority. An enormous swath of territory stretching from what is now Michigan to Tennessee and Illinois was under the Iroquois' dominion in the early 1700s, when their dominance was at its height. Their unwavering solidarity was crucial to their triumph, especially when they aligned themselves with the British in the French and Indian War. Their unity gave them the strength to weather any storm. Number 10. The Apache. The Apache are one of several indigenous peoples in the American Southwest, Western Canada, and Alaska that speak a variety of languages that are related to the Athabascan language family. Many Apache communities flourished in an area that extended from the Arkansas River all the way to the northern border of Mexico and from the center of Texas all the way to the center of Arizona. Their ability to adapt and thrive was remarkable, as they successfully navigated the impacts of the Spanish, the Comanches, the UTEs, and the Americans, all of whom were formidable empires. With the use of both their ancient bows and the modern guns brought to them by Europeans, the Apache became masters of mobile guerrilla warfare in difficult terrains. They rode their horses with such finesse that legend has it they could fire several arrows. The cornerstone of their military might was their reliance on surprise and stealth as survival tactics. They were experts at ambushes, charging in with surprise assaults before vanishing into the familiar terrain. The Apache were masters of raiding, a technique that allowed them to escape their pursuers before they could respond because to their lightning-fast foot and horse movements. They were proficient with steel weapons and Spanish horses, and they learned to wield lances and knives with lightning speed, greatly increasing their efficacy in battle. General Crook famously referred to the Apache as the tigers of the human race, emphasizing their ferocity. They displayed remarkable speed, agility, and stamina in combat, thanks to their roughness, which enabled them to outpace cavalry on foot. Their remarkable archery talents were on display as they sent 7 arrows into the sky prior to the first one touching down. But their viciousness didn't stop in war. They were merciless to prisoners and would ruthlessly torture their opponents. They were notoriously brutal in battle, with victims subjected to terrible treatments such as being skinned alive or even having their children slaughtered without mercy. Number 9. The Pueblo. The Pueblo people are a Native American group with deep roots in the American Southwest and a long history of shared spirituality, culture, and agriculture. Taos, Hopi, San Ildefonso, Acamelo Odom, Pima, and Zuni are among the most famous Pueblo settlements today. Each Pueblo has its own set of cultural customs influenced by its own history, traditions, and agricultural activities, and the languages spoken there come from 4 different families. Even though they all grow maize, the Puebloans may trace their ancestry back to the ancestral Puebloans, a name that's commonly confused with Anasazi. Many people nowadays, meanwhile, would rather not use the name Anasazi because of its Navajo origin and the fact that it means ancient ones or ancient enemies. The name Pueblo, which translates to village in Spanish, is a reflection of the tight-knit lifestyle of the community. The Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century were astounded by the ornate, multi-story settlements constructed from adobe, stone, and other indigenous materials. Pueblo towns in New Mexico are the most numerous among those that have received federal recognition. However, other states and regions around the Rio Grande and Colorado rivers also include Pueblo tribes. Even in modern times, Pueblo countries maintain a strong emphasis on agriculture, close-knit family units, and reverence for their history and culture. Their spiritual beliefs and cultural practices have been expertly maintained, and they have even blended elements into a distinct Pueblo Christian tradition. The Pueblo people are famously tranquil, yet they also happen to be quite talented artists, producing works of art that are in great demand across the world. Although precise counts are hard to ascertain, it is believed that around 75,000 Pueblo people call New Mexico and Arizona home. Other states with minor Pueblo populations include Texas and others. Number 8. The Hopi. The majority of the Hopi people call the Hopi Reservation home. They are Native Americans who mostly inhabit the northeastern region of Arizona. Living in the Colorado River Indian Reservation, at the boundary between Arizona and California, some Hopi people are also members of the Colorado River Indian tribes. There are about 19,338 Hopi individuals in the U.S., as reported in the 2010 census. There is a connection between the Hopi language and the Uto-Aztecan language family. Hopi means peaceful people or polite ones, and symbolizes a culture that values kindness, unity, and adherence to Masaos, the Creator or Earth's caretaker teachings. Living in harmony with nature, honoring all things, and seeking peace are all part of what it means to be Hopi. The Hopi people pride themselves on their modesty and serenity, and they consider farming a holy obligation. The Hopi are the most western Pueblo Indians, and their language is a distinct Uto-Aztecan tongue. Stone houses constructed in a circle around a kiva, a ritual building, give these communities its unique character. Matrilineal clans unite Hopi people from several communities. Children inherit the clan membership of their mother. Traditional naming is carried out by the female members of the father's family. The town settles on a common name for a baby after considering more than 40 potential options. Although many modern-day Hopis adopt English or contemporary Hopi names, major life events or religious initiations may still cause a name to change. As a people, the Hopi have a special place in their hearts and consider themselves stewards of the land that their ancestors left them. Number 7. The Alaskan Athabascan. Native Alaskans who identify as Athabascan include the Alutiiq, Inupiat, Haida, Simpcw, and other northern Athabascan communities. About 112,924 Alaska natives were living in the state in 2000. Although 5 Tlingit tribes remain unrecognized, 229 Alaskan settlements have received government recognition. A people known as Dina, meaning the people, the Athabascans are multilingual. They speak 11 languages. The Yukon, Tanana, Susitna, Kuskokwim, and Copper Rivers were the traditional homelands of these Alaska natives. From the southernmost point of the Brooks Mountain Range all the way to the Kenai Peninsula, this area is called the interior of Alaska. Nomadic hunting parties of 20 to 40 individuals, often including 2 families, formed close-knit networks that comprised Athabascan villages. At their heart, these communities frequently consisted of a wife and her brother, who would spend the rest of their lives hunting with her husband. In other cases, these partnerships started when a couple tied the knot. The mother's brother was the de facto head of the household in traditional households, responsible for teaching his sister's children the values and traditions of their clan. Children of Athabascan mothers were considered members of the mother's clan, with the exception of the Holok and Denaina. For the Athabascan people, physical prowess and stamina were paramount. Game such as rabbits, caribou, bears, and fish were common prey, and they often went on foot chases. Bows and arrows, clubs, spears, and snares were among the tools they used. Due to their frequent travel and reliance on foot hunting, the indigenous people of Alaska devised a system of lightweight, flexible snowshoes crafted from birch and rawhide to traverse the treacherous icy landscapes and avoid starvation. Number 6. The Comanche. Kamania means enemy or those who want to fight me in Ute, which is how the Lords of the Plains Comanche gained their moniker. Their ancestral homeland was the Great Basin in the American West, where they were members of the Shoshone Tribe. Anthropologists have found linguistic, familial, and lifestyle parallels between the Comanche and the Shoshone, which they attribute to their shared Uto-Aztecan heritage. During the 16th century, when horses were introduced to North America by European immigrants, particularly the Spanish, the Comanche would trade with neighboring tribes for them. They adapted their way of life around horses quite fast. Thanks to their improved means of transportation, the Comanche were able to spread out across the plains of Kansas and Colorado, where they made a living hunting buffalo. They gained notoriety for their mastery in wild horse capture and domestication. Comanche riders began their training at an early age because horses were a status symbol and because the Comanche were known for their exceptional riding skills. The Englishman William Blakemore, who shared their culture, said that the people were ungainly on foot but courageous on horseback. They kept the Spanish from expanding their empire for about half a century by frightening settlers with their fast and violent attacks. The Comanche were notorious for their terrifying Kamain Moon attacks when they would kidnap women, kill men, and steal horses, despite the fact that they were renowned as horse thieves. The status of a young warrior was built around his or her accomplishments in battle and raiding, which were the lifeblood of their culture. The Comanche were so dangerous that not even the combined might of the United States, France, and Spain could subdue them. Their techniques were infamously vicious, and they subjected captured women to terrible torture. Historical records describe the practice of beheading, burning, or burying prisoners to their necks, and then leaving them to perish in the sun. As one of the most feared indigenous groups in American history, the Comanche are forever remembered for their unparalleled horror. Number 5. The Yaki Tribe. Southern Sonora, on Mexico's western coast, is home to the Yaki people, an indigenous Native American group. Yaki is an own dialect of the Cajita language family, which is a subset of the broader Uto-Aztecan language family. Among this group, the Mayo are the only other people that speak a language that is similar to English. In the past, the Yaki were a community of long-term farmers who had strong ties to the land. But throughout the 1600s and 1700s, they showed their resilience and fortitude by vehemently fighting against Spanish invaders. They eventually formed villages based on churches, drawing inspiration from Spanish missions. However, a succession of rebellions occurred in the 19th century when their arable land was invaded by Mexican invaders. In 1887, a large number of Yaki were forcefully deported as a result of the Mexican army's harsh reaction to these revolts. Their population was drastically reduced because to the constant conflict and migration. After the Mexican government acknowledged the Yaquis' plight in the 1930s, they returned a large portion of their ancestral territory. Huge irrigation projects have diverted the Yaqui River's flow since the 1940s, changing the emphasis of Yaqui agriculture. Due to this shift, they no longer cultivate traditional crops like maize, beans, and squash, but rather wheat, cotton, and vegetable oils, all of which are more economically feasible. Even though the Yaqui are mostly Roman Catholic, their religious customs include a lot of indigenous elements. And further few thousand continued to dwell in Arizona, USA, contributing to the preservation of their rich culture, while the population dwindled to an estimated 25,000 by the end of the 20th century. Number 4. The Sioux. The Sioux are an indigenous people group with a long history of existence in the North American Great Plains. The Dakota and Lakota peoples make up the bulk of this vibrant community. Their collective name, Oseti-Sakowin, translates to 7 council fires, and it serves as a symbol of their interdependence and common history. The French form of the Ojibwe word Nisi, which means little snakes, is where the name Sioux comes from. The wider Sioux people and the many languages they speak are included by this phrase. Santee Dakota people thrived in the years leading up to the 17th century by subsisting on wild rice, game, and fisheries in the northern Minnesota and Wisconsin regions bordering Lake Superior. Conflicts with the Ojibwe in the 18th century prompted several Dakota to relocate to southern Minnesota, where they became part of the Western Dakota and Lakota tribes, drastically altering their way of life. By signing treaties with the U.S. in the 1800s, the Dakota people ceded a large portion of their territory in Minnesota to the U.S. Unfortunately, the U.S. administration often disregarded these accords, which resulted in famine and the 1862 Dakota War. The Dakota were forcibly removed from Minnesota as a consequence of this bloody war. Some of them sought refuge in Canada, while others settled on reservations in neighboring North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. Some Dakota started migrating back to Minnesota around 1870, and today's reserves are the result of their presence. It was in 1858 when the Yankton and Yanktonai Dakota, also known as the Witina, first settled in the area around the Minnesota River. Even after they gave up some of their territory to South Dakota, the Sioux continued to play a crucial role in protecting the Pipestone Quarry, an important cultural monument. The Sioux are a Native American people that presently call North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, Montana, and even certain portions of Canada home. They are famous for their fierce warrior culture and long history of hunting. Number 3, the Navajo Tribe. Approximately 300,000 Navajo people call New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah home. They are the second largest Native American population in the U.S. They are native speakers of an Athabascan language. The Navajo and Apache peoples from Canada for the Southwest about 1,100 and 1,500 CE. They were nomads at first, plundering for food and learning agricultural techniques from the Pueblo Indians who lived nearby. Navajo and Pueblo peoples began to contact in the 17th century, when the Navajo had settled in the region. This was particularly true after the Pueblo people sought sanctuary with the Navajo after the Spanish put down the Pueblo Revolt. Canyon de Chelly in northern Arizona is one of many locations where Hopi people were pushed to join the Navajo in the 18th century due to dryness. The Navajo people, who drew inspiration from Pueblo art, produced beautiful woven carpets and painted ceramics. These creative influences are also seen in their ceremonial traditions, such as dry sand painting. The Navajo faith is multifaceted, with several oral histories that explain how the first humans came from many subterranean realms. More intricate ceremonies, often performed by healers, coexist alongside more straightforward ones, and vice versa. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people still assemble each year to participate in public dances as part of certain traditions. In 1863, the United States government sent Kit Carson to tame the Navajo, despite the fact that the Navajo were not as violent as the Apache. About 8,000 Navajo and 400 Mescalero Apache were captured at Bosque Redondo during this battle, which caused severe crop damage and resulted in a 4-year captivity that left lasting wounds of animosity and mistrust. Number 2, the Chickasaw Tribe. The Chickasaw are an indigenous American people that live in the American Southeast. Parts of western Tennessee, southwestern Kentucky, parts of northwest and northern Alabama, and northern and western Mississippi make up their ancestral homeland. They are native speakers of a Muskogean language. The Chickasaw people are now recognized by the federal government as members of the Chickasaw Nation. Native Americans of the Chickasaw people migrated from an area west of the Mississippi River to what is now Lawrence County, Tennessee, northwest Alabama, and northeast Mississippi, according to their migration tale. Their interactions with settlers from France, England, and Spain occurred throughout the period of colonization. The Chickasaw were officially acknowledged as one of the 5 civilized tribes by the United States government due to their extensive adoption of European American traditions. But the Chickasaw were compelled to surrender their property in the 1832 Treaty of Pontotoc Creek and moved to Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma, during the Indian removal period in the 1830s, when Europeans started to encroach on their land. Many of their offspring are still residing in the Sooner State. Sharing a common ancestor with the Choctaw, the Chickasaw Nation has grown to become the 13th biggest federally recognized tribe in America. 2 distinct moats existed among the Chickasaw people in the past, the Osage Cha and the Anaka Leapa. Nevertheless, it is unclear what exactly these entities were responsible for in relation to Chickasaw clans and villages. In the matrilineal kinship system which the Chickasaw have historically practiced, the mother is the primary conduit for the transmission of familial bonds and inherited property. This implies that children inherit their social rank from their mothers and are so regarded to be members of their families and clans. Among the tribe's most powerful members were women, who not only inherited the chiefdom, but also controlled the vast majority of the tribe's possessions. Number 1. The Ottawa Tribe. Of the 4 Native American tribes of the Odawa people in the U.S. that have received federal recognition, one is the Ottawa Tribe of Oklahoma. Ancestors of the tribe who spoke Algonquian language moved here from the Great Lakes area and the Atlantic coast throughout time. They arrived in the area that is now Ohio and Michigan in the 18th century. When the U.S. government forcibly relocated the Ottawa west of the Mississippi River in the late 1830s, the course of the tribe's history changed dramatically. They traveled to Iowa and subsequently Kansas, both of which were part of the Indian Territory that existed back then. The Ottawa people got their name from the word Ada, meaning to trade. This emphasizes their extensive history of being expert dealers. In addition to their trading skills, the Ottawa were famous for their fishing prowess. Because there were so many fish in the Great Lakes area, they mostly fished using nets. Following the conclusion of the Civil War in 1865, the Ottawa people relocated from Kansas to the northeastern region of what is now Oklahoma after selling their property there. They obtained permission from Congress to buy property from the prominent Kawa Tribe in the region. The ancestral homeland of the Ottawa Tribe of Oklahoma extends into Michigan, where 3 more Ottawa tribes that have received federal recognition are also situated. Included in this category are the Little River Band of the Ottawa Indians, the Grand Traverse Band of the Chippewa and Ottawa Indians, and the Little Traverse Bay Bands of the Odawa Indians. The original homeland of the Odawa people is Manitoulin Island in Ontario, Canada, and there are Odawa villages there as well as in the United States. In your opinion, what do these Indigenous American communities represent? Please let us know what you think by posting a comment below.